That sounds absolutely epic. That was awesome. Hey everyone, welcome to That Pedal Show. Dan here.
Mick here, hello. So I'm looking really pleased with myself because I sort of managed one of those licks, which you'll probably hear repeated many times through this show. Please subscribe, hit the subscribe button. It's free, it doesn't cost you anything, it helps us out. Also, go to That Pedal Show store and buy merch. It's how we fund this show. Okay, without further ado then, I've been looking forward to doing this for a long time.
Yes, it's taken a while for us to get everything together to make this happen.
Yeah, and the context is this, right? Very early 80s, Ibanez comes out with the 9 series pedals. I have been very, very lucky, thanks to Kevin Bolembach at Godlyke Distributing in the US, and there's a whole other story there, but I've been very lucky via him to speak with Mr. Susumu Tamura, who...
Wow, that's very cool.
Led the team that designed this.
Yes. Amazing.
And indeed this. And I had a very enlightening email chat with Mr. Tamura, who kindly gave us some background. I'll publish that in full somewhere, and I'll stick a link in the description. Brilliant. So I don't want to get any of the details wrong because it is quite detailed, and he does go into some of the history so we might touch on some of that, but please read that in its full. And it's fascinating because Mr. Tamura has been interviewed many times about this, but not so many times about this.
Yeah.
Ibanez SD9 Sonic Distortion, which came out as part of the 9 series from Ibanez. I think it was 81 maybe.
Right.
But again, please check all the facts in the accompanying text. What's really interesting about that is it is a pedal favoured by a couple of my favourite guitar players, Michael Landau and Scott Henderson. And it just so happens that as time has gone past, we've ended up with a Scott Henderson version and a Michael Landau version, tweaked, inspired by the original design. Interestingly enough, this one is also designed by Mr. Tamura.
Okay.
So the point of today's show is to have a listen to these. Dan and I have been a little bit confused about them in the past, would you say?
Yeah. Every time we've put them on a board with other IDs that we're familiar with, we didn't get it.
Yeah.
I certainly didn't get it.
Yeah.
But like hearing that then, I'm like, teach me, shape me, mold me. That was awesome.
Yeah, so as always, it's about application. And we thought, let's give them a revisit then. For sure, there are probably many others on the market that have been inspired by the original SD9. These are the 4 that we have. They probably, for me anyway, sit as the touch points, the main touch points, as I'm aware anyway. So we have an original TS9, well, a modern reissue TS9 Tube Screamer, purely for context. The fact that they're both green, whatever. In the interview with Mr. Tamura, he says this was very much an overdrive and we could think of this one very much as a distortion.
Sure.
He describes the kind of soft clipping feedback loop.
In the op amp.
In the op amp, and this one is hard clipping after the op amp. So he goes into that much detail in the interview. Very interesting. Also, we talk about the history of Ibanez and Maxon because Mr. Tamura worked for the company. Maxon was basically the Japanese brand that was sold in Japan. Ibanez was the export brand. Again, more details on that. But they have the same DNA, as you know. So reissue Tube Screamer, TS9, original SD9.
Okay, what year is that? Like 80 something?
Not sure, but it's 80 something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I just found it on reverb.com.
Oh, well done.
An Analogman-modded SD9.
Nice.
And this is the standard Analogman mod. I can go into more details in a minute. It's not the silver mod. The Totally Wicked Audio SH9, and of course the Vemuram Butter Machine, which has just come out this year, signature pedal of Michael Landau.
Beautiful.
So I think we've also got some wobbly on there, so that we can do that sound if you're familiar with Landau, and some delay and reverb. Amps today.
I wonder what the settings are.
We're using the PRS HDRX20 because it's kind of martially. We don't have to crank it in the way that we would have to crank a 50 or 100 watt
to get
plexi.
that, yeah.
So it's on the edge and the pedals will be pushing it a bit. And an anomaly in the amp world, it is a Tweed Bassman circuit, but in a 212 cabinet. It was called the Bass Breaker and was a Fender Custom Shop amp from around 2000. And together, this one's doing all the top and bottom, that one's filling in the mids, and it just works really nicely.
Yeah, lovely.
Landau and Scott Henderson, both fans of fairly cranked amps, both fans of greenback speakers.
Okay.
Things change over the years. More often than not, you'll see Landau playing a Hot Rod DeVille.
Yeah, okay. He's got a signature version, right, with his speakers and stuff.
Yeah, and they get rid of the second channel and make it 2 clean channels.
Okay. Oh, wow.
And if you want to read about Scott Henderson's amps, there's a great section on his website which talks about his amps over the years.
Okay.
So clearly neither Dan nor I can play like them, so it's not about them specifically, more about a dive into how these pedals differ. So the first question I asked Mr. Tamura, and you can read this in the text, which I'll publish somewhere, is how did they differ? Because everyone knows this, right?
Yep.
This is a typical TS9 reissue tube screamer. And this is purely for context, right? To get us in the game, to understand what we're dealing with.
Okay, so the amps together. That is a visceral experience.
Yeah, so real bloat in the lower mids from the tube screamer, or at least the mid nose on the tube screamer. Quite a distinct rolling off of high end. By contrast, the SD9, very fizzy.
Yeah.
Much more aggressive distortion. And as we come to discover, the tone control, much past about 9 o'clock, is very aggressive.
Now, I wonder, because Michael Landau and Scott Henderson crank their amps, right? I wonder if they're using that amount of fizz to get through the compression of the speakers.
Yeah, almost like a pseudo treble booster,
there you
maybe.
Go. Yep.
Yeah. So, but into a clean amp, it's pretty edgy and not very pleasant at all.
Sure.
And as we'll come to see, one of the main mods in the newer versions is changing the nature of that tone control.
Okay.
I apparently, and I don't know this, that's more or less how Landau ran his SD9 when he was using it.
Okay.
And he says in the text to the Vemuram, which we'll come on to, that he has always had a love-hate relationship with the pedal, which is so interesting, isn't it? So apparently this is where Landau would set his SD9, or something similar to this anyway. Level cranked right up, distortion very low, and actually distortion 9 o'clock, I think. And the tone pot basically off, or almost off.
Can I just have it play on that sound for a second, just to hear the difference between these two? Wow.
It's a groovy noise,
That
isn't it?
is amazing.
But of course, if you get your overdrive pedal and you've got to set the tone on basically zero and the level on, you're thinking, well, I paid for all this. I want it here.
Yeah, right.
And anyway, Landau fans will know that maybe it was a little bit outside of that, but broadly speaking, very high level, very low tone,
Sure.
quite low overdrive. Because again, if he's going into an amp that's cranked, the amp is already going to be giving in, so that level push is making the amp overdrive.
Sure.
So rather than just looking at the pure sound of the pedal, you're looking at the symbiosis of what the amp and the pedal are doing together.
Okay, that's really good.
Okay, so that's the original. Let's move on from there. Analog Mike started modding them,
Okay.
and I want to say that Scott Henderson's main one that he used for years was an Analogman-modded one.
Okay.
And if you look on his pedal board, there's a pedal that's painted, I want to say like a red color, because he felt like red was more of a distortion color. And I think, so Analog Mike Piera says that his wife painted it, and that was his original modded Analogman SD9.
Wow.
I think, please check the, in fact, I'll tell you what, I probably wrote it down. I didn't. Go and check that that's true. I think I'm remembering it correctly. So, true bypass.
Oh, is it really? So that's on a relay?
You would know.
Okay.
The other one's not true bypass. So you're dealing with the sound of the buffered bypass if that's a problem for you. A lot of people put them on true bypass loop switches for that very reason. And for those of you who aren't regular, that's what this is, right? This huge thing here. That's keeping it so you're only hearing the pedal one at a time. You're not hearing them chained into another. Okay, the idea was behind the mods in the Analogman that was smoother, warmer, and clearer. The tone knob becomes more usable throughout its range.
Okay.
And that's about it, really. So they didn't like the bypass sound. The tone knob wasn't usable, so let's mod it.
Okay.
Mike does, if you go onto the SD9 page on his website, on the Analogman website, you'll see a whole bunch of other mods as well that he will offer, including adding the Bad Bob booster. But anyway, probably as much information as you need. So have a quick listen to this, and Dan, I'll start you off on the other one again.
Okay.
Let's go for, let's say, these settings, because I find them symmetrically enjoyable.
That's really interesting.
I rather hope that was as clear through YouTube as it's clear to me and Dan.
Yeah.
So quite a bit more lower mid comes in on the Analogman mod, which there's still plenty of aggression in that overdrive. Plenty of sizzle. Yeah. We've it's a bit of motivated cognition for you. So we first start calling it fizz, and now we're calling it sizzle.
It says what's really interesting about Fizz. The first time I heard it called Fizz was when we did the interview with Simon Neal from Biffy, and we were with Richard, that's tech, and it's talking about the metal zone, and he says, "Yeah, but we need that fizz," and I'm like, "Oh, really? That's because in that fizz is all the transients and the treble that goes." And cuts through.
So, as with all tone words, they can be pejorative or they can be entirely positive.
Yeah.
I just want to try it with the Strat a minute. Landau for years and years and years. So I'm here calling him like Landau as if he's some sort of
Mikey.
So Michael Landau for years. 3 single coil Strat is, I think his favourite Strat's the 63 Fiesta red one, and then he has a 68 and a 69. I want to say. Big headstock.
And humbucker, right?
One of them has a humbucker, I think, or maybe they both do.
Okay.
But I can't remember the exact chronology of those guitars. Anyway, he is pretty famous for using a 3 single coil guitar as well as humbuckers.
Yeah.
And one of the things they say, or that is said, should I say, about Michael Landau is that when he's got the overdrive pedal on, the distortion pedal, his volume is very rarely on 10.
Sure.
So that kind of roll-off is also important. Just want to try that with the Analogman-modded. Using some traditional single coils. So expect some hum, people.
It sounds amazing.
It does a really good job. So users of traditional Strats, you might be aware of that thing where you turn the volume control down a bit and it just goes dead. That doesn't happen at all on there.
No.
What is the typical input impedance for an overdrive pedal?
So these ones will be about a meg.
I think they're lower than that.
I think, sorry, they are on the information it says about a meg, but actually you are correct, they are lower.
Yeah.
So I think they're closer to like half a meg.
Yeah, because the classic Boss pedal is a meg, isn't it?
It's supposed to be a meg, but it's a bit lower.
It is, yeah. I think some of these might be 500K.
Yeah.
And one of the things that happens there is it gets a bit more responsive off the volume control. I don't know if that's the only reason, but in any case, it does clean up really beautifully. Bit ice picky on the bridge pickup, but on the neck pickup, really lovely.
But you know what happened on the bridge pickup though? There was still a weight in the bottom end. When you hit it, it still went thud.
Yeah.
I want to try it on the telly just to see, because I want to see if it has the same response.
As you're doing it, when we've discovered that, can you then start playing some higher notes? Because the next thing, we've put the lower mids back in, right?
Right. And
we've got rid of some of the fizz, and we've made it clearer throughout its range. The next thing they wanted changed, and this will bring us on to the SH9 and Butter Machine, is they wanted weight in these notes.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll come on to that in a sec. But so same thing.
Same thing, please.
Do you want to start with the original one or the new? Or the,
start where you were, which was
this one?
Yeah, that one.
And I had. We'll turn that on in a minute.
Yeah.
But let's have a bit of that for you because I had that on, I think.
Okay. Yep. Cleans up so beautifully.
Just see if this one does as well.
That is wonderful.
I think we found a newfound respect for the SD9, haven't we?
Really, the Analogman, absolutely.
Yeah, the mod. That's really killer. Really killer.
Yeah, it has that thing where, I mean, that attack will take a bit of adjustment.
Yeah.
Because I think with a lot of overdrive circuits, we push a bit harder to try and get that to break through, but that is so present that you can actually afford to be a little bit lighter
and start using the guitar controls much more.
Because it's so responsive off the
One thing I
control.
really wasn't expecting. So Red is such a individual sounding guitar, a fantastic sounding guitar. It does pretty much everything. What I wouldn't have thought from an SD9 was that I'd still be able to hear Red
clearly.
Unsullied.
Yeah.
In those down, that's the guitar I know with the volume down. Killer.
That's really impressive.
Okay, let's move on then. So the Totally Wicked Audio. This has got an interesting story. I'll tell it briefly because this might be in the Tamura interview, but I'll tell it briefly. There is a very lovely gentleman by the name of, and I just want to get his name right so that I don't get it wrong, Kevin Bolembach. Kevin Bolembach works for an American distribution company called Godlyke. You might know them from power supplies and all kinds of other things, I think. They used to be the American distributor for Maxon.
Okay.
So he had a relationship with Mr. Tamura, because Mr. Tamura was working for Maxon at the time, or at least there was a connection there. Maxon changed their American distribution situation just after they'd come up with the Maxon custom shop line. I don't know if you remember those pedals that kind of came out.
They had the AD9 Pro and those ones. Yeah.
There was some others, and Kevin and Mr. Tamura, along with other people at Godlyke, as far as I can understand, worked on those pedals. That relationship ended. Fill in more detail here. What eventually spits out the other end is a company called Totally Wicked Audio.
Okay.
which has a range of pedals, and via a circuitous route of Mr. Tamura developing something separate, and these guys having a relationship with Scott Henderson, eventually it all comes together in the SH9. I apologise if that's a bit of a shrinking of the story, but that's basically how it comes together. Again, Mr. Tamura might expand on that in the interview. So this, clearly, it's got his initials on the front. He was using the Analogman-modded one, as we know. And I need this bit of paper, the manual.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of those.
Just to double check. There he is, Scott Henderson. I'll put a bigger picture of that. I do have a better picture of that on the screen. It's a continuation of this. What Scott Henderson wanted was center frequency of the tone control to be shifted into the lower mids.
Okay.
So not entirely dissimilar to what's happening in the
Analogman.
Allowing the notes to speak properly in the higher registers. Increase the note girth.
Grrr.
Which is kind of what I was alluding to before about how do these notes up here start to sound.
Sure.
But retaining that slightly compressed feel that the pedal has.
Okay.
Because if you listen to Scott Henderson, and please do listen to Scott Henderson if you haven't already.
I was going to mention that because players out there that might not know who Scott Henderson is. When I was studying music, one of the other students said, you got to hear this, and brought in an old VHS cassette, I think Hot Licks. Henderson Hot Licks. And put it on. And we just all sat around crying. Scott, please go and have a listen if you're not familiar with him. He is the most extraordinary, expressive, harmonically rich guitar player. Really, really wonderful.
As a very slight tangent, with apologies, if we see guys like Stevie Ray and Eric Clapton as the kind of genesis of the original blues guys, I feel like Landau and Scott Henderson are the genesis of Jeff Beck.
Oh, that's very good.
Even though in some cases they are contemporaries.
Sure.
But that interest in sonic experimentation,
and they've just taken that on the whole journey.
I feel like it. And they also have, great harmonic I don't want to say when I say interest, because it makes the other stuff sound not as good, but they have extra harmonic interest in their playing that comes from a much wider sphere of influences than the straight blues guys. And I think, and there are others, obviously we're talking about Landau and Henderson here because the pedals are on the board, but really those two, they pushed in that direction in a big way. So anyway, sorry, a bit of a tangent, but please listen to Scotty play. It is astounding guitar playing.
Astounding.
But one thing I do hear in his playing is that compression in the top end.
Sure.
So usually quite a lot of gain when he's up there, but not in a very sort of viscerally pokey kind of way, in quite a smooth way. And according to this anyway, change that relationship of the tone control, also make it louder. One thing we noticed about the Maxon is it's quite, the Analogman mod is it's quite a bit louder than the original one. And I think both Landau and Henderson wanted louder.
Sure.
So let's have a listen to that. No extra controls on this one. On the Vemuram, there's some other controls, but as far as I'm aware, what you see is what you get.
Okay.
Here, we've got it set up to the Scott Henderson settings.
Oh, well played.
Pretty much. You probably can't see that on pedal cam, but I promise you they are somewhat similar. So Daniel, we'll start here, I think.
Okay.
no doubt about it. Much more shunk, for want of a better word, on the...
How are we spelling that?
S...
There's this CH,
Yeah,
surely.
S-C-H-U-N-K.
Yeah, there you go.
More shunk on the... on the top notes. Feels like the distortion ventures further down the frequency spectrum.
Okay.
So I'm hearing more distorted low mids, whereas that one there's almost a cleanliness in the low mids and the bass. Whereas this seems to be fatter and thicker across the board.
Okay.
Just try that with a bridge humbucker a minute. Yeah, man.
So the reason I picked this guitar up is because I have a suspicion. Okay, just switch over to me for 1 second on the same sound. So
this is screwed in so that it doesn't move, which goes right over this. Sorry, Dean. This is a Dean Cutler, by the way, Cutler custom guitars. It's great.
It's so interesting with that level of distortion that the differences between two guitars with humbuckers is so clear.
Yeah, there's so much more low mid in that.
Yeah, but you can hear it really.
The extended.
Yeah, but you can. That's the thing, right? Because when you said with like red, you can still hear red so clearly. I thought even with two humbuckers, the qualities of the guitar are still coming through with that much sizzle and love in the signal. It's super interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So before we move on to the Vemuram, then, given that basically moved from this to that, let's have a quick listen to those two and just see what we're hearing.
Okay. We'll get red back.
I'll set them the same. I'll set them to the same to begin with, which might not make sense because all the pop values might be different. And anyway, we'll start there.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll stay playing this. Why not? I'm enjoying this.
It's great.
with apologies for the awful playing. I just wanted to go up the fretboard and hear the thunk in the notes.
There's more note in the SH9.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Feels like it. Feels like it. And
But,
of course,
but saying that though, I'd be happy with either of those because I think they both sound fantastic.
yeah, me too. There is something about the lower mids in the SH9 I really like.
Yeah.
In a minute, when we get to the Vemuram, we'll compare some of the lower gain sounds as well. I appreciate we've focused on quite distorted at the moment.
Yeah.
But let's move on to the Vemuram, and then between the two, we'll look at some lower gain sounds as well. Okay. Michael Landau also was an SD9 user, and as it explains in the manual and on the Vemuram website, if you want to go and read it, has long had a love-hate relationship with the SD9. So he started working with Vemuram a while ago, developed backwards and forwards, as it does, and came up with the Butter Machine.
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of interesting. So like all of the mods so far, he wanted a more usable tone control,
Okay.
more output. But there are two extra controls on this around the back that do two really important things. One is called Sparkle. Let me just check I've got that right. Yeah, Sparkle. It's basically a treble and a bass control. Sparkle controls the peak at around 6K.
Okay. Well, all that fizz is.
That's where the fizz
Yeah,
is. Yeah.
okay.
So you can dial that in for different amps, speakers, guitars, or whatever, and we'll have a listen to it. The other one is a low mids.
Oh.
Because as we've identified
Yeah.
right from the original SD9, that adding an extra chunk of low mid in there is a pretty nice thing to have in an SD9 kind of sound. So those are both adjustable. Oh, no. The slight hilarity we're going to give you is Michael Landau's settings. If we thought the others were loud... Now, bearing in mind he might be running it into a cranked amp, so the increase in volume wouldn't be quite the same. This is the Michael Landau setting. I have already adjusted the back trimmers to be in Mr. Landau's setting.
Okay.
Are you ready, Dan?
Okay. I am scared. Wow.
No immediate problem with audibility. It's loud, isn't it?
That's really loud, but it's really clear.
Well, I think what it's doing is it's pushing both of these amps into a little bit of overdrive.
Okay.
In a lovely way. So it is said that Mr. Landau doesn't use his volume control on 10 when he's got his distortion box on. I find it hard to believe 100% of the time, but certainly for a great majority of the time, it may well be true. So I'll try that. Said before, just reiterate, he's used all kinds of guitars down the years. He's most famous for single coil Strats, perhaps. Played a Surf for a long time. And then the more I see him recently, he's got some sort of humbucker, whether it's a full-size humbucker or a mini humbucker. They did a really great custom shop Strat with smaller humbuckers in it. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. So Landau fans, you can fill in the details. Let's explore what happens. I believe these are bare knuckle mules, maybe, in this guitar.
Okay.
In any case, they're a PAF style and they're not massively high output, so it's quite a traditional humbucker in this guitar.
Right.
So. Like that?
I really, really like it.
We'll do some comparisons with the SH9 in a minute. Sorry, I'm wandering around, so I'm looking for the little screwdriver which adjusts the settings in the back of the Vemuram, and I had it, and I'm like, right, I need to put that somewhere where I'm not going to lose it, and I've lost it already. So there we are. Found it. It's a tiny, tiny screwdriver. What we'll do is...
Sorry, that's it. It's like a screwdriver for a Lego character.
Yeah. I'm going to put my earphones in because I'm going to be right in the firing line of the amp while we do this. But I'm just going to change the sparkle and the bass control so you can hear that before we move on. Okay, just to hear what they do.
It's an absolute beast.
So you heard the how much scope that low mid control's got in it.
Yeah.
I mean, it almost entirely scoops out.
I wish it didn't go that far.
Yeah.
I wish it was just a subtle thing, because I think it'd be easy to completely stuff it up.
You might be pleased to know that they are basically both straight up at this point.
Oh, really? Oh, okay, there you go.
So what I was doing, you wouldn't have been able to see me on the floor unless Hades was... no, you wouldn't have been able to see me on the floor. I was looking at Dan and... Or you might have been able to see, I don't know. Asking him if he wanted up or down, up or down, up or down. And I left it where he was happy. And they're pretty much...
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Wow. Yeah, no, I'm of course, again, this has now sent me into a flippin' crisis.
So we're going to do two more things. We're going to have a quick listen to the Butter Machine and the Analogman-modded one. And then finally, I just want to have a listen to some of the lower gain sounds and have a quick compare up of the Henderson one and the Landau one, and see where we are.
It's interesting, right? With the lower mids pushed back in, it's like the most musical distortion. It's just wonderful.
I'm going to go back to the old Stratocaster because it's the guitar on which I'm principally comfortable. Actually, let's just have a laugh for 5 minutes. This will be really interesting. This guitar has got a completely different lower mid quality.
Yep.
And I have it on reasonable authority, having interviewed him twice. That's the name drop horn. It's going, you're forgetting to honk me. Actually, have I met Scott Henderson? I might not have met Scott Henderson, actually.
Oh, okay.
But
we must rectify that.
have you met Landau?
I haven't met Landau.
I have. Yeah, I interviewed him a couple of times. He has a 335, which has got the out of phase.
Oh.
The out of phase thing.
Okay. Fair enough.
So this is just for a bit of fun. I just want to see if this guitar will hold on to that pedal.
Okay. My prediction is absolutely.
Sorry, a bit indulgent, but I like this.
Very much?
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very
like
much.
Like there, full throaty, and then here, just like clean.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, that was a bit of a tangent, but it was enjoyable nonetheless.
What's a tangent?
Yeah, killer, man.
Yeah, the Scott Henderson has the mids naturally in a different place.
Yeah.
But it sounds great. I love the tweakability of the Landau and it's man. I don't know. What do you for the way that you play?
I like them all.
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
I even like the original.
Yeah. It's there's a little bit of selfishness going on here because I bought the Butter Machine
right
when it came out, just thinking I'd like it. Joey bought one, and my mate Jake Loosemore bought one, and you know it's collectible and it's kind of rare, so I got my hands on one, and also picked up the old original SD9 on reverb as I mentioned earlier, just to see because. Back to the head of the show, it's a sound that had always eluded Dan and I. Got kind of confused by it, didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
Because of that extra rasp in the distortion perhaps some confusion over the tone control, which clearly has been addressed. What are these mods doing? Changing the nature of the tone control, dialing in lower mids. Let's before we quit then, let's see what we can get in terms of lower gain sounds.
Okay.
And to be fair, the gain is still only at 11 o'clock on both of them. So let's go both ways.
Okay.
And see where we can get to.
Okay.
What?
Something. So when you set it up, the Landau settings, the gain was quite low.
Yeah.
Originally. Oh, and that was on the Analogman one, was it? Or the original?
Yeah. So as far as we were aware, his settings were about there on the original pedal, we think.
Okay.
Something like that. But these are his settings on this pedal. So
okay.
Things have changed, clearly.
So let's hear the original one, because I loved that. I thought that sounded magic.
Okay, so we're back to this one.
Yep.
What do you
Just
wanna
saying,
go from
so immediately I want that up a little bit louder.
Yeah.
Because dynamically on the clean stand, I've got so much more headroom. So I'm just going to give that a quick go. Okay, so no matter how low you go on the gain, you just put a little bit of thing in it, it just goes. Pff, so there's no clean setting on it as is.
Yeah.
However, at the lower gain settings, the dynamics is off the charts.
Yeah, that's a clean sound I can totally live with.
Yeah, it's amazing, and the way it responds off the volume control, it's astonishing.
Yeah, I can.
It's like a really good fuzz.
Yeah.
In that sense.
You'd never be playing your well, maybe you would, but I'm gonna see if I disprove my own point here. Because there's always that element of like exactly what like you said.
Yep.
But that is a clean sound I can deal with because for those of you who love really sort of round, clean, bold, you know, perfectly kind of clean sounds, clearly it's not that. But I like the dissonance in the clean sound, in the way that a fuzz face does it when you turn the volume
in the
down.
harmonics of it.
Huge fan of that. So if you play a chord that's got some extension in it, oh god, here we go. Not a great example, lots of single coil hum going on.
But the chime in it is crazy.
And having that around the edge of the note.
Yeah.
That's really
so beautiful. You know what it reminds me of?
Well done, Collider.
Yeah, it was amazing. But you know what that sound reminds me of? When you've got like a really nice analog or a tape delay going to the front of a crunchy amplifier, and the amplifier's the edges of it, but you still hear all the information and all that energy in those very top frequencies. It kind of has that built in. So yeah, I love it. I'm a convert. I'm going, okay, so what do I do?
Yeah. I think you'll instantly prefer one as well. I think the extended lower mids, all that extra chunk, what I did on the last tweak there of the rear controls was just take some of the lower mid out because it was putting quite a bit more in than the SH9.
Okay.
But of course that means that you've got it if you want it, and certainly for playing at home, certainly for playing at low volume, certainly with playing with a small amplifier, having extra of that low mid is a great boon, which you really miss in the original.
Yes.
But into a cranked amp, at volume, there is something undeniably magic about the original.
Yeah.
It does a thing.
It really does.
You can see why different venues, different volumes, maybe one night you're using like a, I don't know, a Hot Rod Deluxe or something, and the next night you've actually got a 4x12.
Yeah.
Let's pretend for a minute we live in that world. You can see why you get so aggravated by that.
Absolutely.
So we move on to the Analogman mod, and the extra output, the clarity of the notes make every sense. And I am liking the Analogman one in a big way.
Yeah.
For me anyway, the SH9, if you're a fan of Scott, it's that sound.
Yep, that's the one.
That extra compression in the high end,
yep.
Something that's together about it, something that...
And where that mid-range is placed in it, it's really beautiful.
And it definitely does a thing, and it's its own sound. Clearly, the Butter Machine is the most versatile of the bunch on account of those two rear things, but it's worth saying that could send some of you into option paralysis about where best to have it set. The only one I wouldn't put on my board is the original.
Okay.
Because...
it'd be too frustrating.
I just love the extra, having heard it,
yeah, the extra
headroom of the others is fantastic, but I could be, it's, you know, to pick a favourite at this point is tough. I'd be equally happy with any of those.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think ultimately I'd probably go with the Butter Machine. Sure. Because it's got the
tweakability. Yeah.
The tweaky, but I could, yeah.
I'm just grateful that now I have a new understanding of where they sit sonically and how you can actually make them work.
Yeah.
Because I think what the Scott Henderson and the Landau pedals have done is shown the benefit of all that top end and sibilance in the frequency is, that's there for a very specific reason.
Yeah.
The cleanup on it is beautiful, but the nature of the overdrive and the distortion is visceral, and actually in the context of playing with other people, when you kick that on, I mean, it's like, I can imagine for doing gigs, when there's a version, a song comes on that needs a bit of wah, instead of turning on a high gain overdrive and bashing the crap out of the guitar, actually that will give you all the distortion in the world, but still retain that dynamic so that you can still be with that. Being dynamic with that level of gain is a real challenge.
Yeah.
And this design from the original has it in spades.
Yeah.
So cool.
To sort of nail that on, if you've ever stood in front of Phil X while he's playing the guitar, or Landau for that matter, or any of these guys who play at volume and understand transients and frequency at volume, the amount of that high frequency in the sound is very often arresting. Just the same if you stood in front of a plexi that's cranked. Yeah. Or any amp for that matter. And when we're playing at home in our sort of safe environments of it being all nice and round and fat and full and warm, that on the top can seem like too much. Yes. It can seem too fizzy, it can seem horrible. And to be fair, on these we do have it down a long way. But exactly what Dan just said, over cymbals, over the melee of a proper live mix, it's what you need to be heard. Yeah, I'm with you, man. I'm so pleased we've done this.
Yeah, me too.
Will one sneak onto the pedal board? I don't know. We'll have to see. I've slimmed down in such a massive way.
Okay, well I haven't. So yeah. Awesome. That was really fun.
Good. I want to say big thanks to Kevin at Godlyke and TWA for his help with this. I want to say massive thanks to Mr Susumu Tamura for the background information. Check the links.
For the amazing designs.
Yeah. And for continual inspiration for 40 some years. Awesome. I'll put links to all of everything we've just mentioned in the thing below. And yet again, an education and a bit more understanding.
Yeah, lovely. Brilliant. Hope you enjoyed that. Again, please subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. Massive thank you to our patrons on Patreon. Thank you so much for your support. And of course, massive thank you to anyone that's gone to thatpedalshowstore.com and grabbed some merch, t-shirts and strings and pedals and hats and loads of cool stuff there. So go and check it out.
Please do, please do. Did we mention our retailers?
We haven't mentioned our retailers.
Check out the links below. You can go to Anderson's, you can go to Pedal Empire. If you buy stuff, that helps us out too. So we appreciate that.
Indeed.
Until next time.
Until next time. Cheers, guys. Bye.
See ya.